first, I just kind of want to run through my bio real quick. I'm not 32 anymore. I'm 34. But anyways, disability is called Arthrogryposis. I was born with it. Uh, it's a rare congenital disorder, meaning I've had it since birth. Um, the easiest way to explain it is I can close my hand. I can't open my hand. I can push my arm down. I can't raise my arm up. Same thing with my legs. So the pattern you kind of see is that I have the muscles on one side of a joint, but I don't have the muscle on the other side of the joint. And the reason for that is I was born with every other motor carrier nerve, meaning if you go down my spinal column, it's by no means a perfect pattern, but it is a fairly solid pattern of I'll have the one nerve and then the next nerve is skipped and so on down my body. So while I was born with all the muscles, I was not born with the nerves going to them. So, I'm 34 now. Obviously they, since they've never been used, the muscles aren't really there. Kind of a good example of that was I was only 12 years old, and that was really my last surgery I've had. I've had 35 plus surgeries, but the last one I really had was when I was 12 years old, and they wanted to try to give me a bicep. And by that, they took the gracilis muscle out of my leg, and they were going to try to attach it to where the bicep should go in the arm, and attach it to but there had to be some level of bicep there in my arm to connect it to, and then they were going to try to connect the nerve. And when they opened up my arm, all that was there was not even a shoestring for what would be your bicep. And so it was so small, there was nothing to even attach it to. So that puts it in perspective of the muscles that I don't have. I really just flat don't have them. The one that confuses me that no doctor's really been able to explain is triceps in my arms. If I had full triceps, I should be able to, put my arms on my wheelchair and lift myself out of my wheelchair, but I can't. I can push down, but not full. So it seems as though some of the muscles are not completely there. So, anyways, went to West High School, went to Wichita State, 2 bachelor's degrees, one in management information systems, one in sport management, master's in sport management, and then I'm a Hartford athlete ambassador, professional tennis player, and then Wichita State assistant men's tennis coach, and a adjunct lecturer. Is that my title? Okay, there we go. I teach a class. There we go. Here on campus. So that's kind of my quick background. I'm going to go through my tennis timeline, and again, I'm not going to take too long doing this because I know most of you know this story. But what I wanted to go through was just, I think this is important because this is kind of how I got to the point of being an athlete, to be able to tell you this story of what it was like to become a Paralympian. So in 1993, I was in 8th grade, and 7th, 8th grade, I made the decision that I wanted to play a sport in high school. It was that simple. Raise your hand if you thought they would let me play football. No? Come on, it was a joke. Laugh at me. Come on, you two especially. You're used to me making stupid jokes in class. Laugh at them. They're not going to let me play football. Nobody's going to tackle a 300-pound piece of metal. So that knocked out every contact sport right off the bat. Track would have been a little bit stupid. Driving around, NASCAR in a power wheelchair, it's not going to really work. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it quickly became tennis or golf. To this day, why I chose tennis, I have no idea. I had never played tennis. I knew nothing about tennis. My family had played golf. I had attempted to play golf with them, and I'd gone out and golfed 9 holes with them before. Very slowly, I'll add, but I'd done it. Not tennis. So I thought, well, okay, guess I got to figure out how to play tennis. Started out, I couldn't have hit a ball from here to mark. I couldn't hit a ball 10 feet. So wasn't really going to make sense to play on a tennis court because, number one, nobody wanted to play with me. It was pretty boring. Couldn't hit the ball over. Had no power. Even when I did hit it, didn't know where the heck it was going to go. So I started hitting against a garage door. And I did that for a year plus before I really ever even went on a tennis court or ever played tennis with anybody, because it was just the only way to do it. When I first started out, the simple thing was somebody would just stand there and bounce the ball to me. One time it was almost like pitching a baseball. They'd stand there and I'd just bump it back to them, and that was the extent of it. I then got to the point where I could hit it against the garage door once, twice, 3 times. But I still had to have somebody bounce the ball to me to start with because I couldn't get it off the ground. Well, I wanted to and eventually did practice for 5 to 6 hours at a time. I apologize, I'm going to back off of the mic for just 1 second. So, do that. I needed a family member to stand there and bounce the ball on them over and over and over. Well, that wasn't going to work. Nobody would do it. So now I have a problem. I hit against the garage door. I'm trying to do this by myself. I hit against the garage door. I miss. Ball's laying on the ground. Now what do I do? Come on. This is interactive. Somebody give me an idea that doesn't know. Everybody in here knows. You two don't know. Think. Come on. What could I do? Granted, I don't have a tennis racket with me. If I did, I'd try to hit Dr. Stoll or something. It'd be kind of fun, but you're reading the word kick serve. There we go. All right. See, they know to look at the PowerPoint. Exactly. Pick it up with my foot. So, that's how I did. Pick it up with my foot, flip it up like that. To this day, that is still how I serve when I play wheelchair tennis. That I am aware of. I'm the only... Oh, well, ball's gone. Okay. That I am aware of. I am the only tennis player in the world, at least competitively, that serves by using their foot. I can assure you there's no one in this world of wheelchair tennis that serves using their foot, because I would have heard about them. And if there's anyone in the able-bodied world that serves using their foot, it'd just be kind of stupid. So I don't really know why they weren't. I'm sure somebody like Novak Djokovic or somebody could probably hit a serve and figure it out. But anyways, so that's one big thing that makes me very unique in the tennis world, is that I use my foot. To the extent I get utilized for a lot of things because I stand out a lot. From a marketing perspective, it's good for me personally, for potential sponsors and endorsers, and I get used in a lot of videos and things like that. One cool thing that just happened a couple weeks ago, the United States hosted a Fed Cup match in St. Louis, and I got to flip the coin for that, and that was the first coin toss ever done off of a foot. Flipped it off my foot. Luckily, I didn't hit anybody with the coin didn't land on me, and I didn't run over the American girl when I tried to get out of the way. So those were all the possibilities that I was worried about. 95, I did make the high school team. It was my freshman year. I said made in quotations if you can see the slides, and the reason I say that is because made simply meant show up at my school. If you showed up and said you want to play tennis, you were on the tennis team. Moving on to discovered my first wheelchair tournament in 95. Continued playing high school. By my senior year, I was the #1 player on the varsity high school team. Again, not to be excited. There was only 11 kids in the city of Wichita that I could beat in tennis, and they all happened to go to West High, which is where I went. Those were the only kids I could beat. We still never won. 2000 was kind of the turning point in my career and the beginning of my international, which is what I wanted to talk about more with you guys. Usually those first 8 steps are 30 minutes right there. But in 2000, I got selected for an invitational tournament that hosted the top 12 players in the world. I got called about 4 days before the tournament started, said, hey, Nick, we lost an international player. We need somebody to fill in. I was ranked 20, 25 in the world at the time. Shouldn't have been at this tournament, really. It wasn't ranked high enough. It was only for the top 12. Said, we need you to fill in. It was down in Birmingham, Alabama. We can't get any international guys to fly in this last minute, so we need you to come down. So I went, talked my dad into driving me all the way to Birmingham, Alabama. Get there, get to the hotel, like 11 o'clock at night, got to play the next morning. Look at the draw sheet. #1 player in the world, first round is who I get to play. Awesome. I just dragged my dad to Birmingham, Alabama in our big old van to drive 12, 14 hours to get my butt kicked by the world #1 and turn around and drive home. Score was 6-0, 6-0. For those of you who don't know tennis, 6-0, 6-0 is as bad as it gets. But I didn't lose 6-0, 6-0. I won 6-0, 6-0. That was kind of the turning point. I had been the alternate on the U.S. national team for 2 years prior to that for what's called World Team Cup, which is our like Davis Cup or Ryder Cup, if you know what those are. A couple hours after I beat him, I was no longer the alternate. Coach called me. I was actually still in the parking lot at the club after I beat him, and the coach called me and said, Nick, Brian just called me, and he just officially retired, and you're going to Paris, so get a visa, hurry up. Had never traveled internationally. At that point, I set my sights towards 2004 in Athens, which is what I really wanted to get to, was talking about the Olympics. However, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about 2003 for a second. First of all, to qualify for any of these Paralympic Games, Steve hit on this, that it's not necessarily, the Olympics and Paralympics are not necessarily about the absolute best in the world. There's a lot of geographic region, I don't know how to call it. Essentially, I'll explain it. To qualify for the Paralympics, I had to be top 12 in the world and the third highest ranked American. Well, in my division, what's called the quad division, which I'll get to in a minute, top 12, there was like 7 of us in the top 12 that were American. So that meant 4 people in the top 12 weren't going to go to the Paralympics that should qualify to go. Top, if you're taking 12 players, it should be the top 12, right? No. So not only did I need to be the top 12 in the world, I had to be top 3 in the United States. In 2003, I was preparing to leave again for World Team Cup. This time was in Poland. I was about 6 weeks out, and I was on a walk with my father. He was doing an exercise walk, and I was in my wheelchair. And I got hit by a car. And I was still in my chair. Now, the first question is that people always ask me is they say, well, wait a minute, did the driver not see you? And the answer to that question is I hope the driver didn't see me, because if the driver did see me, then they were trying to run me over. So, to make a long story short, this car hit me. I had a dislocated shoulder, broken arm, road rash on the entire right side of my body. Luckily, all the damage was on the right side, because when the car hit me, I landed on the right side of my body and my chair and slid down the road. I say luckily because I play with my left arm. So I had all of that damage. The first thing that went through my head when I woke up in the ambulance was, I'm not going to Athens in 2004, because this was for Davis Cup, and if you didn't go for or World Team Cup, if you didn't go to World Team Cup, you didn't get to go to the Paralympics. That automatically basically knocked you out of any possibility for selection. So I'm sitting there going, okay, all this I've worked for, I'm not going because I just got hit by a car. I didn't even care how bad I hurt. Luckily, I ended up, my coach and I still joke to this day when I called and told him, I said, hey, Dan, this is Nick. I got hit by a car and I'm going. That was the statement that I made. Continue to ask me questions for about 10 minutes and I just kept going, I'm going. That's all I would say. I would just kept going, I'm going. Ended up going to Poland, played with a broken arm. Luckily, like I said, the right arm was broken. I was able to drive my chair, sort of, with a broken arm. I think I took out a few fences when I was in Poland, but it did work. So I ended up getting to go. And I qualified for Athens in the process of doing so. Talk about Athens for a minute. I think what I'll do is I'll talk about each games, and I'll try to give you a few just kind of snippets about each of the games that, kind of like Allison did with Sochi. Fortunately, I've got to go to 3 games, so I have some things to compare them to instead of, like you were saying, you talk to other people. The first thing in Athens was, you talked about lack of preparedness, and Athens definitely had that as well. The one example that I always use is in the Athletes' Village. When we got there, we found out on the second day that everybody used the same bathroom. There was like 12 guys that we all had to share the same bathroom. Maybe not 12, maybe 6 or 8 to a bathroom. But the problems in the bathroom was the drain was the absolute highest point in the room. If you think about that, does that really physically make sense? No. So no water actually went in the drain. It went in the hallway and then into everybody's room. And my dad, being the only one out of all of us that had legs that worked, got squeegee duty every single day. So he had to squeegee the halls, squeegee everything. There was a lot of barrenness, in terms of, well, it almost looks like it should have been finished, but didn't quite get there. There was one moment where I looked like an idiot because, we would make fun of stuff when they didn't have it done, and there was this, kind of just this ditch that we would walk by every day. And after about the 4th or 5th day, I was like, man, that just looks like crap, you guys. I'm like, couldn't they have done something with this? They couldn't do any better with the drainage ditch? And then we made fun of it and everything. And then about 2 or 3 days later, I actually stopped and read the sign. it was an ancient aqueduct that they had found that was like 3,000 years old that they found in the construction of the venue of the athletes village, and they obviously didn't tear it down. So, anyways, that was one good example. Attendance-wise in Athens was not bad. You know, people came to the matches. When I played on Stadium Court, I think there was, you know, I don't know, maybe 2,000 people there, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. Media coverage was non-existent completely, not only here in the United States, but even there it really wasn't covered that well. I say that, but I forgot the gold medal match was covered to a degree there. I know it was televised live in Greece. I found that out the hard way when I tried to go the next day down into downtown Athens and go shopping, and I found out that my match had been on live TV and nobody had told me, and I got stopped by a whole lot of people. The best was a very, very large and hairy Greek man. I went by his store, and it was really hot. And I'm not trying to be gross here, but he was very sweaty. And he just starts yelling, "Taylor, Taylor, Taylor." And he runs down the street, and he gives me the biggest hug ever. And yeah, it was just kind of gross. And then he gave me half of his store after that. He just kept handing me stuff out of his little trinket store. Just kept going, "Here, take this. Here, take this." So it was an amazing experience. We were able to pull off the gold medal in doubles. My doubles partner and I, we were by far the favorites going into that. In singles, I had a very good chance of medaling in singles, and I unfortunately had to play my doubles partner in the semifinal match. Again, for those of you that know tennis, I was up 5-2 in the first set and lost 7-6, and I was up 4-1 in the second set and lost 7-5. So essentially you could say I choked, because I did. Went into the bronze medal match, and this is something I don't share with a lot of people. I don't know if I've ever said in a speech or not, but this is probably one of the biggest regrets of my entire career. I went into the match, and I was pretty angry. I was pretty mad because I knew I could have been in that gold medal match, and I wouldn't say I didn't try. I mean, I absolutely tried. I always try, but I probably did not give it my 100% mental in that bronze medal match, my mental effort, and I lost in 2 tiebreak sets. And I think I thought that I was cool enough. Oh, it's all right. I'll get my chance again. The only positive from that I could possibly come up with, if you one that things, think that things happen for a reason. The guy that beat me for the bronze medal got diagnosed with brain cancer a couple months later, and never really played wheelchair tennis competitively since. Moved forward, wanted to get to qualify for Beijing, wanted to win a medal in singles in Beijing. That was my entire goal going into Beijing. I wanted to do well in doubles. I wanted to repeat the gold, but I knew we had a pretty good chance. I really wanted to medal in singles. So I put a lot of effort into strength and conditioning work that I'd never really done before, and got to Beijing. Got to the semifinals, had to play the eventual gold medalist. He was a British guy that I'd never beat. I know Dr. Stoltz heard me talk about him. He's since retired, but I'd never beat him. He just physically had a lot more physical ability than me, and he knew what to do, and there was nothing I could do. So going into that semifinal match, it was going to be really tough to beat him. However, my doubles partner was playing the other semifinal match against a Swedish guy that he had never lost to and that I had never lost to. So looking at it on paper, okay, he beats the Swedish guy. I get to play the Swedish guy for the bronze medal. I got a pretty good chance. He fell apart, lost to the Swedish guy. So now I had to play my doubles partner for the bronze medal, and on top of that, 3 hours before, we played for the gold medal the very same day. Again, I lost to him in 3 sets. My chances again at medaling in Beijing were pretty high. Not as high as Athens, but pretty high. I kind of skipped what I was going to talk about with Beijing. In terms of lack of preparedness, lack of infrastructure, lack of organization, all of that went out the window. They were the most organized group of people I've ever seen in my life. To give a perfect example, when I got off my plane, there was a whole bunch of Team USA on the plane. We get off the plane, going through the hallway, and I see this row of luggage carts. and a guy standing behind every single luggage cart. I look up and one of them has Taylor written on it. He looks at me, he goes, Taylor, and I said, yes. He says, okay, go. I started going forward, I look back, 5 volunteers came out of that line with luggage carts, and they all had Taylor on them, and I swear they came out in like fighter pilot formation. That's how organized they were. Everywhere I went where there needed to be 1 volunteer, there was 5. To a comical degree. You know, some things you only need 1 person to do. You don't need 5 people to do it. And there were 5 people trying to do a task that only 1 person can do, so it would actually end up taking longer. Security was extremely high. You showed a picture of the airborne thing for observation. They had a blimp that flew over the tennis center the entire time we were there. We had somebody from the State Department that was always with us. Also from security, the one thing I learned as an athlete in all 3 of these games is if you don't want to deal with security, don't go out of the secure area. If you don't go out of the secure area, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But once you do, good luck getting back in is going to take a long time. But at one point in Beijing, I did go out of the secure area, and to get back in, they had to do all this search, and they kept searching my backpack. They kept sending it through the x-ray. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. They kept taking stuff out every single time. I sat there for like 40 minutes while they searched my backpack, and there wasn't that much stuff in it. The final thing that they took out that let me get through clearance, and this is kind of funny because it was China, was a ping pong ball. The ping pong ball was what was setting off the x-ray machines that they couldn't figure out what it was. Never had it explained to me why. But in terms of attendance, it was a lot better. I will tell you, you know, as a Paralympic athlete, we don't play in front of a whole lot of people a lot of times. I played that in the quarterfinals. The gentleman that beat me for the bronze medal in Athens, I actually had to play him in the quarterfinals in Beijing. That was about the 2 years where he made his comeback after the brain cancer, and then he retired because he just couldn't quite do it. But I played him in a stadium filled with 9,000 Chinese elementary school kids. And to hear 9,000 people yell, "Go Nick," on the changeover, it was kind of cool. And the other thing that I learned about Asian culture, or at least Chinese culture, I don't know if it's all Asian culture or not. In Athens, I got asked for autographs, not a lot, but a little bit. In China, after I played that match, I went up to try to meet my family up in the public area where everybody could get to. And I got about 20 feet out the elevator, and then I got mobbed. And when I got mobbed, I sat there for, I think, 2 hours the first day, like this. For picture after picture after picture. They didn't care about autographs. They all wanted to take a picture. So it was kind of cool because at least I didn't have to sit there and try to sign something, because of those of you that have seen me try to write, it's extremely slow. So it was easy for me, but I didn't move for about 2 hours. And then I learned after that first day that if I put my head down and I went really, really fast through the public area, I sometimes wouldn't get stopped. But the problem was once one of them stopped me, then it was all over with, because once one did it, the rest of them thought, I can do it now too. Moving forward to London, going into those games, the gold medal was at best a 33% chance of winning. There were 3 teams that were going to medal, and we just didn't know which color they were going to be. It was us, Great Britain, and Israel. When the draw came out, we hoped we didn't have to play Israel in the semifinal. We wanted GB to have to play them so they could beat up on each other, and then we just have to play one of them for the gold. Of course, we had to play Israel for this in the semifinal. Pulled that out, and we had to play, so that meant we played Great Britain for the gold. Now, this moment in my career will be far and away the coolest sporting moment I think I'll ever experience. I don't know that it would do any better, especially since Dr. Dittmore said there's not going to be any Olympics in the United States till 2024. I don't think I'm going to make it to 2024. So the only thing that I think could beat this is if I got to play in the United States. But in that gold medal match, not only were we playing 2 guys from England in England, we were playing 2 guys from London in London. Completely packed house. 65. The stadium held about 6,000. There's about 6,500 in there. Every seat was full. Standing room only. The wheelchair seating area was about 15 feet deep, and they let all the people in wheelchairs sit on the front row so they could see, and then there was just a wall of people standing behind them to try to get in to watch this. It was on national TV in England in about in Great Britain, and then along with about 10 other countries, not the United States. I'll get to that. And it was literally, if you've heard like about a soccer match in Europe, how crazy the crowd gets. That's how it was. Every single point, there was either 6,450 people cheering or 50 people cheering. The 50 would be the United States. The one thing I learned that day about myself is I really, really like being the bad guy. It's fun to make 6,000 people just shut up with one swing of a racket. That's enjoyable. So on top of that, there had been some documentaries put out about the two guys we were playing are kind of legendary in England, and so they had made some different pieces about them that had gone on some of their sports shows and some of their other channels, and in every single one of those, we were kind of made out as the antagonists in those stories. We were the bad guys because they were going to have to beat us if they wanted to win the gold medal. So most of these people already knew who we were and didn't really like us because they made us look like terrible people. All right, I'm going to move on. Anything else you want me to cover about the Olympics? All right. I do talk way too long. All right. I think this is the next most important slide. Who here could tell me the difference between the Special Olympics and the Paralympics? Either one of you? Without reading. All right, okay. Exactly. So I'll go through it real fast. Special Olympics is for all ability levels, participation-based, meaning they want people to participate. Primarily for intellectually disabled, and it's completely separate games from the Olympics. We have those games right here. Special Olympics. Paralympics, elite ability level, competition-based. What I mean by this is you've got to qualify. There's only one winner. It's primarily for the physically disabled, and it is directly after the Olympic Games. So, should I go a couple questions or? All right.
Any questions? Nick, what do you think? What's the next step for the Paralympics?
In the United States, it's got to get on television more. The way to do that, I don't really know. In Athens and Beijing, the coverage was literally a hour to hour and a half minute highlight show for the entire Paralympic Games. London was a little bit more. There was a couple little shows. There was some streaming video on the internet. For Rio, supposedly there's going to be a lot of coverage. For the Sochi Paralympics, there was a lot of coverage. But what I saw, I watched a lot of it on NBC or on NBC Sports for Sochi. I felt like the coverage was, like you said, that maybe they weren't going to be as prepared with sites for the Paralympics. I felt like the media was the same way. The people that were doing a lot of the commentating weren't very prepared. They didn't really know. They had some specialist there that was an ex-athlete or something like that. But, they showed a biathlon race in the Paralympics in the U.S., which biathlon obviously isn't, overly popular. They showed it from start to finish with no breaks, no in between, no nothing. I'm a Paralympian. I know some of these guys, and I'm sorry, it just wasn't that. It's hard to see on TV. I'm sure if you're there live and you can see what these guys are really doing and how amazing they are, yes, it's interesting. But on TV, the coverage just wasn't that great. The coverage has got to increase, and I think the quality of the coverage has got to increase. So I think that's the biggest thing. The more the Paralympians, the one thing that I thought was, with Visa ads and some of the BP oil ads and some of the different things, they put a lot of Paralympians in them, and I think the more of that, the better as well. Does that somewhat answer the question? I mean, it's the cart before the horse. Where media coverage is only going to come from interest, but I think that they're just going to have to almost kind of force it. The one thing I was going to say about media coverage for London, the way that it works is the organizing committees are able to sell the coverage for the Paralympics geographically. For London, in North America, they put out the option for the bid. Said, okay, put the bids in. The highest bid's going to get to cover the Paralympics. no one even placed a bid to cover the Paralympics in London in the North American region. So the USOC bought it for $100,000 and then did, I think it was $100,000, did stuff streaming on the internet instead. That was the coverage. NBC, the reason I think they're covering Rio, it's part of the deal, part of the TV deal that they bought to cover the Olympics. They have to cover so much of the Paralympics. Yep. I think it would, honestly, I had never heard that until you asked that question. That was something I haven't heard that much about. But my thought would be it would take away from, I think, the point of it. I mean, I understand logistically what it would do. You know, as Dr. Kim's going to talk about Rio, and I mean, I know I've heard a fair bit of things at Rio. I'm very interested to hear his, you know, discussion about that because I've heard a lot of rumors. I think it would take away from the whole point of it. You know, I think it would just become another sporting event that nobody would, you know, it wouldn't mean near as much, you know, because of geographically. So I think it needs to be in different places. As from an athlete's perspective, I've never tried to organize an Olympics, so maybe if I tried to volunteer or organize, I'd say, oh, you know, maybe it'd be better just to keep this in one place all the time. But and the politics and the fight that you have, imagine that if it was always going to be in one place. So, and feel free to take a look at the medals. I know most of you already did, but